Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Castle Crashers. This was one of my first indie games that I was introduced to, like I assume many other people. I downloaded this on the Xbox 360 online store, which really popularized that format of video game buying. Before that, it wasn't really common for you to buy your video games digitally. But the Xbox 360 storefront, I think, really revolutionized that. I heard about this new awesome game called Castle Crashers from a friend, and he wanted to play it with me, so I downloaded it. And it's actually, I think, one of the few beat 'em up games that really resonated with me. For one, it probably is because it's one of the first beat 'em up games that I actually did give a fair shot, but I do think that the medieval fantasy setting sold it for me, alongside with some RPG mechanics like leveling up and putting on equipment. It's a really good game when you just are spending a weekend with someone. For this playthrough, I was on a weekend trip with my nephew, and it was just like the perfect game to play on the airplane or at our hotel when we were winding down for the night. It takes maybe about 4 or 5 hours to do a playthrough usually, but there's other things that you can go for to get like a full completionist run. Story-wise, you are knights protecting a kingdom, and this evil wizard guy comes and takes your precious magical jewel alongside 4 princesses, and so it is you and your knightly friend's duty to go and rescue the 4 princesses and recover this magical gem. There's not a whole lot of dialogue here. Most of the time when enemies are talking, they'll just make noises like nah, hey, ha. You do get a selection of characters that will open up as you beat the game with said characters. Originally, like, the main knights that you can play as are like the blue knight, the red knight, the orange knight, the green knight, and there's not much differences between these knights aside from their magic, because their magic has different elemental properties attached to it. So the orange knight has like fire magic, the blue knight has ice magic. I chose, in my opinion, the most overpowered knight for this playthrough, the red knight, because he has electrical magic. And the cool thing about this electric magic is it freezes the enemies in place as it does a bunch of damage over and over again. And the more you power up the magic, the farther the range, the longer you can use the spell, the more damage it does. And so it's really good at just lining up all the bad guys in a row and completely demolishing them with this giant electrical beam. My nephew chose the blue knight, and he was following my lead by powering up my magic, and so his magic would do like more icicle shards the more he powered up into it. The level select is pretty charming. You're just on this overworld where you can follow the pathways, go to different levels. There are different storefronts where you can buy potions and bombs and different equipment. There are arenas if you want to battle each other. That's a fun little PvP moment. There are also other PvP moments when you have to like fight over who gets to rescue the princess. It has that kind of like online flash game irreverent humor. You know, one of the earliest levels you're going to be encountering a bunch of animals that are just pooping for some reason. Another time you are crossing the ocean and you are being attacked by these ninja pirates. There's this giant corn on the cob boss where every time you attack it, like a piece of popcorn flies off of it. So I do think that it does a good job balancing that like serious action type of tone, but also peppering in tons of silly moments and characters. And also a wide variety of environments as well. You'll go to your classic wooded area full of these bandit-looking enemies, or like this lava area full of like these demon and fire guys, or you'll transition to this icy area full of these bundled enemies. You also go to like a mechanical area, and so they do a good job of like transitioning between these environments and letting you see how all of these different areas kind of get pieced together, either through the overmap or when you're playing through levels. You can kind of start to see a transition between enemies that you're fighting. The bosses themselves are very unique and diverse and memorable as well. Some of them can be more annoying than others. They don't give you a lot of time to retaliate or counterattack, especially if you're playing a magic user that has to be rooted in place. But with enough patience and perseverance, you can take down pretty much any boss. Now, I mentioned equipment. There are 2 pieces of equipment that you can add. There is what weapon you're using, and that can affect 4 different stats: your strength, your magic, your defense, or your agility. And your agility is like your speed and how well you can use a bow and arrow. And so these weapons can affect those stats. Obviously, if you're going for like a heavy hitter, you want to go into strength. If you're going into magic, you'll want to boost that up. By the end of the game, I had fully invested in my magic bar and my defense bar. I like going the magic bar because as you reach certain tiers, you unlock new magical spells, and it can like, you get this visual upgrade with your spells as you level them up, especially with like the electric guy, because it lets me use it longer and it increases the length of the beam. But you know, every character has their own magical abilities that slowly get stronger as you boost up that stat. I will say, if I am just trying to do a very straight and to the point run of this game, I do end up usually going with like a heavy hitter, somebody just who can whack enemies really hard with their weapons, and that seems to be the quickest way to play through the game, unless you're playing some really overpowered magical enemy like the red electric knight. I also fully invested in the defense stat this time around, because by the end of the game, my nephew was fairly under-leveled, and so if you're playing multiplayer and one of your partners goes down, the other can give him CPR to revive him, and he didn't invest many points in his defense because he didn't have that many skill points to allocate, and so like by the end of the game, he's just getting knocked down by 2 or 3 hits. And so I invested in the defense as my secondary stat because I needed to be the guy to go around and revive him whenever he did pass out. XP is kind of interesting in this game, how it's earned. It's basically earned on like how many times you can hit an enemy. So every time you hit an enemy, you get like a certain amount of XP. And so it's not about killing the enemies, it's about hitting them as many times as possible. And that's another reason why the electric knight is so good, is because he can hit enemies in such a rapid succession that he can really like get all of the XP points. Now, the other equipment that I was talking about are these animal companions, and you're allowed to take one animal companion with you, and you can, just like the weapons, you can find these out in the wild. Some are more hidden than others, but they have various effects. Usually they boost one of your 4 stats as well. In my opinion, the best animal companion is the giraffe, because it increases the amount of XP that you earn. And so because I knew that my nephew wouldn't be accruing as much XP as me because I was playing the electric guy, I gave him the giraffe right off the bat, just so he can at least gain some amount of levels during this playthrough. I do like the home base with like the blacksmith, where you can go and exchange your animal companions and your weapons. The weapons are basically like in this giant toad looking thing with antlers, and you actually like walk inside it to go pick out what weapon you want to use. And then the animal shop is like a barn that you can go and pick out which one you want and see what they do. I do wish that if you got an animal companion, it would tell you what it did exactly when you picked it up. When you pick up a new animal, you basically get this little bubble that says, come see me to find out what this animal does. Whereas like weapons, if you go up to a weapon, it'll tell you exactly what the stats are before you pick it up. There's definitely some frustrations with this game. The big beefy enemies, if they even get close to you, they're just gonna pick you up and chuck you across the floor. So it's really difficult for like a melee character to get up and attack these bigger guys. And also just trying to like aim along the Y-axis. This is a problem that I have with many beat 'em up games, but it's difficult for me to like line up my hits and my shots to make sure that I'm hitting an enemy, especially with characters like this, because they all look paper thin, kind of like when you're playing Paper Mario. Like the characters are just two-dimensionally flat. And so sometimes it's difficult to line up everything to make sure I hit, even though like I think that I'm right there, I usually end up missing until I do line up my shot. Another small gripe that I have with this game is when you level up, it does this cool thing where you learn new attack combos, but I did find most of the attack combos to be not as efficient as your regular basic hits. Now, if you get good enough with this game, then you can essentially fly in the air as you are attacking enemies, because if you're attacking an enemy in the air, then you do not fall down to the ground. Because if you do this juggling thing by switching between your light attack and your strong attack, you can essentially bounce enemies in the air and keep on attacking them. So they can't do anything, but you can just repeatedly hit them. And so as you're hitting them, you kind of push them up against the edge of the screen as you repeatedly whack them in the air. And there's not really anything they can do. As long as you are maintaining those light and strong attacks, you can basically suspend them forever until they die. It's really helpful when you're attacking these big bosses that kind of like fly up in the air. It helps you stay up in the air with them as you are hitting them. You just gotta get good with juggling these enemies in the air, and you'll get a ton of free hits. Money is difficult to come by. There are a couple moments, like when you defeat bosses, you'll get a large amount of gems, but a lot of these items, weapons, animal companions are fairly expensive, so you'll definitely need to be saving up for the items that you want. You'll also want to set aside a decent amount of money for healing potions, because aside from finding food in the levels, that is the only way for you to heal, is by using up these potions. And if you're playing multiplayer, then the potion will automatically be used if you aren't the last one alive. But if you are the last one alive, then you need to remember to use the healing potion before you are downed. Otherwise, it's game over and you gotta start back at the beginning of the level, which can be frustrating because some of these levels are longer than others, and it's a frustrating feeling when you're, 10 minutes into a level and then you die and you have to start the whole thing over again. There was one frustrating level for my nephew and I that we seemed to struggle with, where we got abducted by these alien hominids from the creator's previous games, and you basically have to escape this exploding UFO, and you only have 1 minute to do it, but you're trying to navigate between all these obstacles and stuff, and if neither of you make it into the escape pod before that minute runs out, you got to start the level over again. And so it took us maybe 3 or 4 times to finally clear that section. And so sometimes they're generous with their checkpoints, and other times they are quite punishing. There's a lot of memorable moments in this game, a lot of memorable bosses. There's times when you get to ride little dinosaurs or camels, or you're getting chased by this giant black fuzzy thing and you have to ride a pooping deer to escape it, or you're sieging this castle and you're crashing a wedding that this guy is trying to have with one of the princesses. And it's short enough that it is fairly replayable, especially because if you beat the game with one of these colored knights, then you can unlock one of the enemies that you have been fighting on the playthrough. So when I beat this game using the red electric knight, then I unlocked a skeleton that I could play through the game with, and my nephew unlocked this metal robot looking guy that he could play through the game with, and they have different spells. And it's almost like a new game plus, because any of the weapons or animals that you had rescued or unlocked in the previous playthrough, your new guys can use those weapons, assuming they're at a high enough level to do so. And so it warrants some experimentation and replayability. Maybe this time you don't want to make a magical guy, maybe this time you want to make a super heavy hitting guy, or maybe this time you want to make an agility guy, which I have tried, and it's not as bad as you think. I did build this archer character, and while it's not the best build, it was a unique playthrough of Castle Crashers. And it's just that type of game where, especially now that it's on the Switch, you can just pull off the Joy-Cons, and the controls are simple enough that you can just hand the Joy-Con to a friend, even if they're not necessarily a really big gamer. And I think that they would have a fun enough time playing through it, especially with 4-player. I think it's a blast playing through this game 4-player, especially because you all have your own characters and your own stats that you're managing. And I think that's one of the reasons that this game really sets itself apart from other beat-em-up games, is that more silly tone with those RPG mechanics. So it feels like I'm getting better. It feels like my character is getting stronger and I'm unlocking new things every time that I play through this game. I think if it was longer than a 10-hour game, I would start to get annoyed by it and I would start losing interest, but because of its length, it's the perfect game to pick up every once in a while. I play this game maybe once a year, and now that it's on the Switch, it's even more accessible than ever. I think I will give this game a 4 out of 5. Maybe 5 out of 5 if you are playing with 3 other buddies. Well, folks, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Castle Crasher, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!